welcome to another episode of the Dear Higher Self podcast with Lauren and Gina. We are super excited. Last time, if you caught the last episode, we talked all about Earth School and, why we are here and WTF is going on and all of the big questions.
We took you down a rabbit hole.
Yes, which is a common theme, I think, in every episode now is the rabbit holes. So in this episode, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of those concepts and topics and talk all about manifesting, really digging into what is manifestation, how do you manifest? I know it's a pretty hot buzzword out there in the spiritual personal development space. So we're going to really dive into that, share some stories about our own experience with manifesting, and just kind of open it up to a conversation and see where it leads. So with that, Gina, do you want to kick us off with just kind of an overview of how you view manifestation, how it applies to your own personal practice?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to manifestation, it should come from a place of like being in co-creation with the universe. So like we talked about in the last episode, here we are in Earth School as a soul and a body, and we came here with soul contracts and karma and an intent to learn certain things. And so it can be really easy on this journey to be like, I want a Ferrari and a mansion and a house in Malibu and all these super cool things. And like, yeah, maybe that is in alignment for you, but maybe not always with all the materialistic things. And so I think it's important as you are on this journey of manifestation and the hot topic that it is today, it's like, how do you do that with it being in alignment with who you are and what you're here to do and what you feel called to do, rather than just manifesting something for manifesting sake, just because like your ego thinks that it sounds cool. And so how I see that going is manifesting in co-creation. So it's what you feel called towards and where you feel like the universe is guiding you towards. So you could have the best list, your whole manifestation list, the best vision board, but that might not be what is most in alignment for your highest good. And then the universe might throw you a wrench in there and your whole plan goes sideways, which is fine, because you're in co-creation. So it's like finding that balance between where you think that you want to go and then where the universe guides you. So I don't know, Lauren, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, and again, all of these topics kind of like interconnect, right? So I feel like we're going to end up, digging deeper into what we've already been talking about and kind of like circling around some things. But again, these are such heady concepts and they're so hard sometimes to like really embody. So I think it's helpful that we're doing this in a somewhat of a repetitive manner here, like back and forth. But I feel like with co-creation, I'm thinking back to when you referenced the triangle that we talked about in the higher self episode, as far as, there's you up top, like your soul that's here in this lifetime to learn certain lessons. And then you have your ego and your personality and, your thoughts and the fear-based part of you usually. And then you have your higher self, which is what we talked about, your intuition, your guidance, your connection to source. And both of those things are kind of feeding up in different communication channels to your higher self. So when I think about co-creation from a manifesting standpoint, I think about it in that way as well, of like, you have your intuition that's speaking to you, that's kind of communicating your soul's desires and that blueprint that you're here with these specific missions and these specific things that your soul wants to achieve and express through your human form in this lifetime. And then there's the human element of it, like the form, the physical piece of, I'm here in this body having these desires with these physical things around me, these people around me, these experiences. So it's almost that meeting of like form and spirit coming together to more like holistically connect. And from that place, being able to call in and create the things that you want in your life. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I feel like it's confusing to me just trying to even like verbally explain what my mind is like sorting through here. But I think I think there's a lot to it. And a big part of it is that sense of like that sense of faith and that sense of connection to something bigger, to your higher self, to God, to the universe, to spirit, that's guiding you. And then there's the like physical form part of you that's taking action, that's showing up, that's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing the things, saying the things, and from there creating, you know, results in your life that are different than if you were just on autopilot going through your day in day out, just sort of in like the passenger seat of your own life. um
Yeah.
which isn't to say that you're not also manifesting in that state, right? It's just probably not, your reality is probably not as fulfilling as it could be at nearly at all. So to me, it's like getting in soul alignment so that you can call in the things that you actually desire based on your soul's blueprint and your
Yeah.
soul's mission, so that you can do what you're here to do.
Definitely. I think another important thing to note is you're always manifesting. Like,
Yeah.
reality is a manifestation, and you are manifesting billions of times a second just in what's going on inside of you. Because at the fundamental core of what's happening from a quantum physics perspective, because, I'm a nerd in that realm, what your reality is a manifestation of what is going on inside of your core beliefs. So
Mm-hmm.
you're always manifesting, whether it's what you want to be manifesting, whether it's coming from your ego, or whether it's in alignment with your soul. It's all a manifestation. So it's like, how do we step back and manifest from a place of intuitive alignment and what's in our highest good, and not necessarily from our ego, or to be manifesting things that like we don't want because we're ruminating on negative things and paying attention to maybe what's not going so well, that we perpetuate more of what's going well. For example, it's like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
how do we make sure we're manifesting in a way that's in alignment with what is in our highest good? And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the journey of why we're all here doing what we're doing in the Dear Higher Self podcast. Is how do we make sure
Yeah.
that we are on that timeline?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, when I first started like dabbling in this, I would get really hung up on like comparison and seeing, you know, what people talk about when they're like, "Oh, I'm manifesting this and this is the dream life and these are all the things I'm doing." And it was almost like I had certain beliefs around what I thought I should want as far as like
Mm-hmm.
material items go, or like certain lifestyles. Like, you know, when I first started my coaching business, I feel like I was following a lot of people online who were in this entrepreneur space, and I would see them like traveling all over the world and working from anywhere, and, you know, talking about how they're making all of this money and working like 2 hours a day. And I was just so drawn to that. And I was like, yes, like that's what I want. I want to be a digital nomad. I want to be, you know, working from like Bali or Thailand or whatever. And it's just interesting because those things can shift so much. And what I think I've really learned in the last several years of this practice is like, there will be things that you're drawn to from a soul level, something that like sparks at you. But I feel almost what happens is if you're not like super clear with your connection to understanding that and like how to actually interpret what those things are signaling to you, it's easy to almost get distracted and start to focus on like the wrong thing. Like I would be, for like example, in that way, it's like I'm focusing on, okay, I just want to travel and work from my laptop, right? But it's like, come to find out, I actually wanted freedom and I actually wanted to
Yes.
feel like inspired by my day-to-day surroundings. And it's like I was able to find ways to be inspired by like working from the coffee shop down the street, but, you know, on my
Mm-hmm.
own timeline, like during the middle of a work day, because I wasn't in corporate, like there were ways that I found that same end result and that same end feeling without like jumping on an airplane and selling all of my belongings and like going somewhere else, right? And it's not to say that that's bad. Like, it's just that I think it's really easy to get distracted and to start focusing on the thing you want, or like, I need to manifest, you know, $10,000 this month, or I need to manifest 3 new clients, or I need to manifest a certain amount of weight loss, right? And it's like you're so focused on the outcome that I think it's really easy to get lost in that of like, well, why do I want this thing? What will that thing bring to me? And it's really about that embodiment of the energy behind what that would bring to your reality, right?
100%. I'm so glad you touched on that. That's something that I go deep into in the 10-week program that I run when we're talking about manifestation, because it's not necessarily about the thing. The thing is just a indicator of the feeling that you want to feel. Like that's what you really want
Mm-hmm.
to get down to at the root of it, is like how you want to feel, and then allowing however that is going to manifest to happen naturally. So it's like, yeah, you could have vacations on your vision board or on your manifestation list, but if you're really seeking freedom, like allow freedom to be what comes through. Maybe it will come through as a vacation, maybe it won't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you have to be able to surrender to how and what comes through, and just like root yourself in the feeling of what you want to embody. Because what you could want, if you're so fixated on this vacation, that could be the floor of what you're trying to manifest, when the universe
Mm-hmm.
has something so much greater that is like a way
Mm-hmm.
higher ceiling, but your brain can't go there. So if you get so fixated on like it has to be this vacation to Bali, that's exactly where it has to be, then you can miss out on like a totally different, incredible experience that would yield the same freedom feeling that you're searching for. But if you're so stuck in like the ego of like it has to be this, then you could end up like blocking other manifestations from coming through and having these wonderful experiences. So I think we're getting into another good topic, is that it's like finding a balance between your clarity and the action that you're taking towards what you desire, and then surrendering to what it is that you're calling in, and allowing that co-creation with the universe to like do its job. There's
Yeah.
a two-part effort going on here.
Yeah. Um, Mike Dooley, who is an author, and he's the author of the Notes from the Universe email
Mm.
series, which I love. I get that if you don't have that, it's amazing. It's like a free subscription to your inbox, and every morning you get a little note from the universe, and it's always like so spot on. But I saw him speak at a Hay House event years ago, and he gave the analogy of um, manifesting and creating your desired life is sort of like being in a car with a GPS system. So his
Mm-hmm.
analogy was, when you're thinking about co-creation, is it's like, let's say you're going on a road trip to, I don't know, we're in Arizona, let's say we're going to like Utah, and you've never driven there before, but you know your end destination. So you get into the car, you put the address into your GPS, and this is also like old school, like I think he even referenced like a Garmin, so like an old, like, something up on your dashboard, but it's like in your phone, whatever. Like you put the address in,
MapQuest.
and then MapQuest, you print out your directions, you have your highlighter, and you are like dangerously reading this like stapled document while you're driving. Anyway, so you put your address in, and you get in your car, you fasten your seatbelt, you put the car in reverse, you put it in drive, you're following the instructions. Every time the directions tell you something like, okay, now take exit 23, you're not sitting there being like, what? Like, are you sure? Are you positive? Like, you've never driven this before. You're just trusting that this is
Mm-hmm.
going to work, because every time you've done this with GPS in the past, it's worked, right? It's like you trust that this system is guiding you and that it's going to get you where you need to go. So his analogy was that this is similar to like the co-creation process of, okay, I'm putting the intention out there of like where I want to end up, how I want to feel, and getting clearer and clearer and clearer on that. But then you're working with the universe to like guide you there, and you're not like nitpicking every single step of the way. Well, but why am I not there yet? It's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is like a 10-hour road trip. Like, it's not like you just get in the car and you turn your blinker on and you're like, why am I not there? So,
Yeah.
and then the questioning of everything too, like, how is this going to get me there? It's like, well, maybe there's a construction
Yeah.
block happening and you don't need to know that, but it's like, maybe that's what's going on. The GPS is guiding you around it. And so I think sometimes I try to think about that when I'm getting in that state of like frustration of like, but what is this, like, what, like, what is this doing for me right now? And just trusting that the more you can root into that alignment piece, and really coming from this place of, okay, this is, ultimately, like we talked about before, it's like, this is here to help me grow. This is here to help serve me. And you keep coming back to this intention of like, this is the map that my soul is leading me on. So I'm just going to like follow this and see where it takes me. And I just love that analogy, because it feels so like supportive to me in such a like applicable way. and just feeling like, the universe is supporting you. Like, you do have this powerful
Mm-hmm.
energy that's like behind you every step of the way. So it's not that you have to be forcing and pushing and just in this constant hamster wheel of like taking action, taking action, taking action. There's this like happy medium between, taking aligned action and then pulling back and being in receptive mode and being able to receive and actually like notice how far you've come. And, it's just this like ongoing cycle. And I feel like, that's something that I've really struggled with. I don't know about you, but the receiving piece and the surrender piece, I think is pretty challenging for a lot of us because we're so used to just go, go, go all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not the one driving this car, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting thing for me personally, just trying to navigate that better. And, you know, I think a lot of times, like for me personally, it's like my body really shows me when I need to surrender more. When I'm
Mm.
starting to, like right now, I'm actually like kind of nasally, and it's like I can tell I'm like 5 little seconds away from getting some sort of like head cold, but I'm not like quite there. But it's like, okay, like maybe I need to pull back a little bit, take a day or two just to kind of like
What is this
reset.
telling me? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think that's always a good cue. But then there's others too, right? Like if you're constantly feeling resistance, or if things just aren't happening the way that you're imagining they would, or you have that big pivot, like you thought that you were going to get this specific job, and then completely falls out from underneath you. It's like, okay, like, and again, it's not that you need to know the reason behind every single thing and why it happens. It's more so just trusting the bigger process of like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to the end point.
Yeah.
We don't need to know exactly how. We just need to keep taking tiny baby steps in that direction, and handing over some of the trust and some of the control to something bigger.
Which is nice for a change. I mean, I feel like
Right.
having grown up feeling like I had to be very responsible from a young
Yeah.
age, and it just comes inherently natural to me to want to control and take charge. And I'm also a Capricorn, so I'm like, let's go achieve and get things done immediately. Um, so to be able to live in surrender has been so cathartic for my nervous system to build that trust muscle to be like, oh, okay, I can like sit back a little bit and things are fine, if not better, in fact.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm always harping on when I teach this stuff is your only responsibility in life is to follow your intuition and your excitement, and how your manifestations unfold are literally none of your business. Like, that's the part that you hand over to the universe, like in the co creation part of this whole thing. Like, your only responsibility is to go, what is exciting me and where do I feel intuitively called, and doing that. And then
Mm-hmm.
wherever that leads you, however long it takes, whatever comes into your reality by way of following your excitement and intuition is all you need to do. It really can be that simple. The hardest part is leaning into that and allowing it to be
Mm-hmm.
that simple, because we weren't taught to do that growing up. We didn't have these skills shown to us. We haven't built this trust muscle yet. So it takes a little bit of practice now as an adult to kind of back into living our life in this way where you could be in
Yeah.
surrender.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But I do want to circle back to one thing that you were saying earlier about how on social media you were feeling all these feelings watching what other people
Mm-hmm.
were manifesting, and oh, I manifested this, that, and the other thing, and I'm doing all this and I'm living my life this way. Because I think for so many people who are on social media, it's impacting to their mental health to feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're behind or not doing enough, and so on and so forth, with all the feelings that could come up with that. And I feel like I have figured out a way to get my mindset to work for me with social media, and that I use it as a catalog for like what
Mm-hmm.
I for the way that somebody would use oracle cards to allow their intuition to speak through them that way. That I'm just like, what excites me and what turns me off when I'm scrolling through social media, because that's teaching me, like, that's your intuition is going to react all the time to that. When you're swiping through video after video, how you're responding is your intuition and your ego talking to you. So if you are scrolling through and you're feeling this draw to go on vacation because it seems like everybody's on vacation right now, well, that's your soul's way of telling you that like maybe you need a break, or maybe like it's time for you to have a vacation. So it's tuning in and listening to how your intuition is perceiving those things, as how you can work with your shadow and your intuition through social media. And I feel like that's a healthier way to navigate it than
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
be, you know, just in
Yeah.
your feelings and in your yuck with it. Like I think it's a good way to navigate being in that. Like for me, it's such a teacher that it's like a catalog of what I'm being intuitively guided towards.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a good example, like even just the one of going on vacation, because I feel like you can use that data in a very real way to start to strengthen, like we talked about before, start to strengthen your understanding of your like the language of your intuition versus the language of your ego, and starting to kind of understand the differences there. Because it's like if you see three people in a row all on vacation in your feed, and it instantly makes you feel these pings of like excitement and
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and expansiveness, and like you just feel lit up about like, oh my gosh, like how fun, like I really could use some freedom in my life, some exploration, right? Versus if you feel this instant like gut hollowing, like dense energy of like, look at these bitches, like who are these
Who does she
people,
think
like,
she
yeah,
is?
what are they doing? Don't they have jobs? Like, like the judgment comes in, right? You're like,
Yeah.
look at these people. Like, they probably didn't even like this place. And I think that's a really interesting way to start to notice in your own self and start to bring some
Mm-hmm.
awareness more to the ways that you respond to those things. And,
Exactly.
it's like that energy awareness of like, does this make me feel more alive, or is this like draining me somehow? And that
Yes.
can be the navigating factor in this way. But I
It
love the
really
idea of using that on social media, because it's like
it's such
something
a
we're
good
all
way to build
doing.
your muscle. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how many reps can you get in 30 minutes scrolling through videos to
Right.
be like, how do I feel looking at this? How do I feel
Right.
looking at that? How
So
about
it's
this one?
actually okay. The screen time is okay because you're actually strengthening your intuition.
If you use it in the right way, yes. Like if that's how you're treating it. Yeah, totally.
My kids would love that. I'll tell my girls, yes, screen time is actually okay for you.
They're
No.
like, no, mom, I'm just building my intuition. 10 more
Yeah,
minutes.
literally. No.
So funny. Yeah, I that was one of the ways in which when I decided to step into my power and really build a life that was in intuitive alignment with what I wanted, like social media played such a huge part in figuring out what that was, and me
Yeah.
watching all these girls who seemed like normal girls just like me, who were like selling different products online and shipping all these packages out. Like that felt so exciting to me that I was like, I could do that. Like I could, if they could do that, then I could do that. Like, oh my gosh, that looks so cool. It was like I didn't even necessarily care about their product, I just wanted to watch like their journey with their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a huge indicator to me that it was like, okay, like my soul is really calling for me to step into this world and do something like that. And so I don't know, I love using social media as a tool to be like, what am I feeling for lately?
Yeah. It's like I mean, it is like, what did you say? It's like a catalog. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like a scrapbook in a way for me. I used to scrapbook when I was a kid.
same.
So I like that
But
analogy.
I'm glad you said that because I actually would have a folder that I would just save things to, of places I wanted to go, things that inspired me. And then at the end of the year, I'll use screenshots from those and put those on my vision board because I mean, it's not like we
Hmm.
have a bunch of magazines laying around anymore
Yeah.
to like clip out things from those. So I'll use a combination of Pinterest and what I've saved down from Instagram. So anything that, any quotes that resonate, vacation spots, whatever people are
Mm-hmm.
doing that's cool to me, I'll just save it into a folder. And then I have this whole like what I'm being called towards. And what's cool is you can go back and look at that folder and you'll see themes. Like, oh, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
beach in here. I think we're feeling beach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
cool to kind of later then give yourself a bird's eye view of like, oh, I was saving a lot of those kinds of things. So I think, there's an indicate, there's some data, there's some heat in that map there.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. What do you do? I'm curious, like your own thoughts on this. What do you do when you feel like, if, for example, you have all these images floating around about a beach vacation, and you feel like you end up getting a little bit too on the like controlling energy side of things and like forcing this to happen and it's just not happening. Like maybe finances aren't there or there's someone in your family who needs you and you're like, oh, I can't go on this vacation or whatever, but like you feel yourself in that resistance or like that stuck energy, because I feel like that's happened to me several times, and I'm just curious what your perspective is on that, as far as like maybe how to shift that or what to do when you're feeling that place of like, I'm trying to control the outcome here.
Mm. I feel like at this point, excuse me, I'm such in a place of this balanced aligned action and surrender that if I'm knocking on a door and it's not quite opening, I don't push it any longer.
Yeah.
Like, and if it's not opening, I just kind of allow it. And I'm like, okay, like it's not meant to be in this particular direction. But I don't take that as a no. I just take it as a like not this way. Like maybe it's not a
Yeah.
beach vacation to Hawaii, but maybe it's one like in California, or that
Yeah.
I just come at it from a place of just like I know that I'm feeling alignment towards this, but how that shows up again is none of my business. So I'm just going to keep following my intuition and knocking on doors. And if they don't open, then okay, next door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And allowing that to be, so I don't get too caught up in the like, well, I felt like a beach vacation was aligned. Like I'm really feeling called to this. So where's my beach vacation? Why isn't this working out? It's like it could be something that's coming in 6 months, in a year. Like I just
Yeah.
come at it from a place of like it will come when it's supposed to come in the way that it's supposed to. And um I also want to note, because you mentioned finances, I've manifested free vacations before, just coming from the place of surrender, in that like, well, I might not have the funds at this particular season of my life, but I feel like my intuition is guiding me towards this and I want it, so it'll come my way. And just being in that position of believing that it's possible, that it's still going to happen, even though I don't see the path possible because I don't have the
Mm-hmm.
finances. It's like, no, I know better than to know, like, to put the limits there. So I'll just surrender
Mm-hmm.
and allow it to come in however it's going to come in. And because of that, it will come in. So it really kind of
Mm.
dials back into like your own belief system and your own trust with the universe to be like, okay, I know it's going to
Yeah.
come. So however it's going to come, you can let me know,
Yeah.
universe, because that's your side of the fence. But I am open to receiving when it's ready and aligned for me.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like too there's a piece that goes into this with feeling like you're looking for something in almost like a self-serving way, and feeling like almost feeling like you're looking for something to get something in return in a way that might not be in alignment with like your bigger soul mission. So I'm thinking about like, I'm coming at it from a lens of sort of like the entrepreneur space, especially, and like being online and being in more, soul driven type of work, more like healing work. I think there's a lot of times where a lot of us who are in this space come to it from a sense of like wanting to help people ultimately, like healing yourself and healing other people, and like it's that simple. But then we get caught up in all of these like ego stories and ego beliefs of like, well, I have to have this many followers and I have to make this much money and I have to have these certain things that I'm selling, and
Certifications.
like there's all these rules that we create, right? Certifications and whatever. And in that, it's this weird exchange of like just the followers, for example. It's like, hey, I have to have 100,000 followers in order to be successful. It's like you're trying to manifest something in order to like get a status or get some sort of like ego boost or some sort of internal approval, versus like your original mission, which was to help people, right? And I think there's something to be said about like that stuck and controlling energy, allowing yourself to sort of evaluate like, well, what are my intentions really underneath this thing I'm trying to manifest? And like, is it for my soul's purpose? Is it for this like higher good? Or is it more this like kind of self-serving, kind of like icky ego thing? And I feel like for me, I've had so many moments where I felt stuck in something and I'm not getting the desired outcome. And if I shift my perspective, instead of trying to get this thing that I'm like so obsessed about and so focused on, to something in service, like showing up in service for someone else or something else, or just kind of like taking the pressure off in a way and focusing on something else, from a service-based perspective, I feel like it always ends up working out better in the end than like I initially imagined it would, you know? And I just think it's like kind of this, I don't know, it's like a magic little secret of the universe or something. Like the more you can remember that we're all in this together and it's all this connected, frequency, and it's not just like you manifesting these things for your own pleasure and your own growth. It's like no, like you're stepping into these spaces and these energetic frequencies, like stretching into abundance, stretching into pleasure, into joy, into freedom. And it's like as you do that, so does the collective, right? And the more you do it, the more it allows somebody else to do it. And I just feel like it's almost this like really cool ripple effect that you can start to see in practice. But it has to be, I feel like sometimes you have to almost like check in and just check like, where am I coming from here? Like, what is the intention behind this?
Yeah,
And do I need to like maybe shift that a little bit?
totally. You hit the nail on the head with something that I think we all run into. I still do it myself too, is you end up getting this like really pretty braid of intuition and ego where the two like come together
Mm-hmm.
and braid themselves because you get this intuitive ping that you're like, okay, I want to help people. And like that's the intuitive nudge. And then your ego takes over and it's like, okay, so in order to help people, I want to create this business, but in order for the business to be successful, I have to have this many followers and this certification and da 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 da. And you make up all these rules and you put yourself in this like little prison that says, I cannot manifest what it is I feel intuitively called towards until I can check all these boxes. So you're like
Yeah.
blocking yourself from being able to receive that abundance, which is why you hear so often when it comes to manifestation that you can only manifest what you are in aligned frequency to, because what's happening is you're putting yourself in this little confined prison that says like, I can't allow this because my mind believes that I need this many followers, this certification, so on and so forth. You're literally putting up all these barriers of energetic frequency between you and what you're trying to call in, and it can't come in. So you're creating these roadblocks in your GPS
Yeah.
journey and with your Garmin GPS taking you through, like we were talking about before. It's like you're putting a roadblock in there and you can't complete the journey that you're trying to go to, and that's where people kind of get frustrated and they're like, well, why isn't my manifestation coming through? It's like, where are your beliefs at? Because you can only receive what you can hold and bring in. So how is your
Right.
ego blocking you from allowing it to come into your reality? Where do your beliefs not align with
Yeah.
what it is that you're calling in?
I think money is a really easy example for so many of us
Totally.
in that way, right? It's like everyone has money things that they're working through, whether they're aware of it or not. And, I think there's so many weird, icky beliefs around money and what it means to have money or what it means to not have money and the power dynamics there. And it's not just your own beliefs, it's
Mm-hmm.
generational and it's societal, right? It's like it's baked into all of us. It's something we can't really be completely free of ever. And so it's constantly examining that and looking into your subconscious beliefs of like, okay, cool, I want to make money, but like, how does that actually make me feel? I just thought of this when I had my first daughter. I went, so maybe 4 months postpartum. I was feeling super depressed. I was like really lethargic all the time. I'd had my like hormonal peaks and valleys kind of already settle to where I was like, okay, this doesn't feel like something that's going to go away. I feel like I need to go like see a therapist and just make sure I don't have, postpartum depression or whatever. And I remember going into her office and it was a brand new therapist. I'd never been to her before. And she specialized in like maternal mental health. And I was so nervous. Like I thought she was going to, give me this like horrible diagnosis. And it's like, I'm, have no hope for my future. Right. And she just started asking me some basic questions like, are you sleeping well? No, obviously not. I have a 4 month old. Like I'm up all night. Are you eating well? No. Like I'm not taking care of myself. Are you drinking water? Not really. Like all of these things. And then she started asking me about my beliefs of what it means to be a good mother.
Ooh.
And I had never had anyone ask me that. I mean, I think I had done some work around this like prior to having kids when I first really got into like coaching and spiritual development, all this stuff, right? Like I'm sure it came up in coaching programs I did and whatever. But like having just a regular therapist, like in a, just out of the blue ask me like, what are your beliefs? Like, what do you think a good mother does? How does she feel about herself? Like, how does she show up in the world? And we did this worksheet together in her office, and I was like a blank slate at first. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know what you want me to say. Like, I felt like I was being quizzed, and I was like, I don't know. And then the more I started to really sit with it, I was like, wow, I have some really bad, limiting beliefs here around what a good mom is. Like, it's like, she lives for other people. She's constantly serving others. Like, she never expresses her emotions. She's always like stoic and happy and has everything put together and seems like everything's great, even when she's like falling apart inside. And we started to kind of dig through some of these things. And she's like, well, do you see how it makes a lot of sense that you're struggling right now? And I feel like, I mean, that's a whole separate thing just with like moms in general, right? But I think especially, I mean, for women, like we do have a lot of these societal rules and beliefs that are just pushed on us from day one. And some of these things, most of these things, I don't think are our beliefs to begin with. We've just adopted them, right? We've taken them on. And it's really hard to find those, like just on your own, right? Like I feel like sometimes when you're in coaching containers and whatnot, it becomes easier because you're having it reflected back at you. But if you're just sitting there by yourself, like after listening to this podcast or whatever, and you're like, cool, let me like go examine my beliefs. It's really hard
Where do you
sometimes
start?
to like dig into that stuff because it's so ingrained. But that's like the bulk of where these blocks are coming from, right? So it's like, I think it's just even opening yourself up to that awareness of like, okay, wow, this is going to be work, and it's going to be uncomfortable work, but this is probably like one of the biggest things that you can do to change your life, honestly, is like examining the stories you've been telling yourself and where they're coming from and if they're actually even true for you anymore. And from there, you can start to shift it. And it's like you start calling in all of these different frequencies and people and opportunities, and you just start to like become the observer of all of that. Like we talked about a few episodes ago, like it's all data, right? And you can start to find proof of like, oh, this is actually working. And, you start to like categorize everything and catalog it all. And then before you know it, you're like a completely different person than who you used to be.
Oh my God, 100%. That really is the sweet spot to manifestation. It is not the affirmations you say every morning. It is not writing it down 100 times. Those things are helpful, but like fractionally
Yeah.
helpful. Like they make an impact, but like a drop into a bowl of water
Yeah.
kind of an impact,
Yeah.
So like the sweet spot of really moving the needle comes from digging into your shadow and seeing what is there and what your beliefs are around this thing that you were trying to call in. Because the second you unblock, okay, not the second, but pretty quickly after you unblock it, will abundance in that area just come flowing to you. It's wild. And then through
Yeah.
that builds your trust muscle. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
dang, okay. So when the next thing comes up and you feel resistance toward it and you catch yourself, feeling triggered about something, you're like, okay, I know how this works. As soon as I figure what this is, work through it, clear it to where I'm not triggered by it, really, or charged by it anymore, like boom, it'll come through relatively quickly. And like you keep building that trust muscle to go, oh, okay, I get how this works. This is how things come to me so
Yeah.
easily. Like it really is the sweet spot to all of it, is taking the action to get into your shadow, which is why, having a podcast like this is cool, and to be in like a community of like-minded women and to be part of like different coaching programs and such. Like you're allowing yourself to be exposed and expanded in community with other people, and you grow faster that way because
Yeah.
as you're working through your beliefs, when you're seeing other people who are experiencing similar things and how they're overcoming and navigating it, or if they've expanded themselves in an area that you want to be expanded in, seeing them have that and go through that allows your mind to be able to conceptualize how it's possible for you too, which is shifting your beliefs. So it doesn't always have to just be going to therapy and like doing that kind of work or doing the deep journaling. While that is one way to do it, just being in community and around people who feel expansive is shifting the neural pathways in your brain to allow your beliefs to shift.
Yeah.
Which is so wild and cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like your soul wants expansion, right? Like your soul is here to expand and to express itself through your humanness, your human form. And I feel like that can show up in so many ways. Like for me, sometimes it's even just doing something different that's like outside of my comfort zone and going and trying something new. And it's enough to like unlock something for me that like I didn't know I needed to unlock. But it's
Mm-hmm.
putting myself in these like environments in which I know I'm forcing myself to expand a little bit.
Yes.
And like the dance class that I go to, that I've
Mm.
told you about this. Like there's this dance class at my gym, and you would never think it's like this super healing therapeutic place. It's like a fun, they blast music. It's like a bunch of older women just like throwing themselves around a room. Like but it's like for me, I genuinely feel like it's been like so therapeutic. Like I straight up will just start crying after these classes, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but like something is unlocking here. And I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it, and now I'm the person who cries at dance class at the gym. But it's like it's all good, and I do feel like it's this. It's hard to like sometimes express it, but it's like it's a feeling of like cracking open and expansiveness that I know is like directly related to calling in, next level energies in my life.
I think you're onto something really important. So I'm curious, what in the dance class is doing this therapeutic healing for you? Like, where do you think that's coming from?
Well, I know where it's coming from.
And I don't necessarily mean to
um,
like dig into your shadow, but like, is it
no,
because your body is moving and it's allowing it to come up,
I
or is it because it's
no, I
uncomfortable?
think it's because it's uncomfortable for me. Like I think it's something that a few years ago I would never have even tried ever. Like going in front of people and dancing, like you have to be
Yeah.
kidding me. Like, no way. And I was always the kid growing up. Like, I remember being called on in class and just turning bright red, like every time. And I would be so embarrassed that I was red. So then I was embarrassed that I was embarrassed. And then I'd be embarrassed that I was embarrassed that I was embarrassed, right? And it was just this like spiral of shame in my body that was like, people are looking at me and I'm on the spot and I'm the center of attention, even though like no one in the room probably cared, but it felt like I was dying on every level of my being. So it's like fast forward to now, and I'm like leading programs and I have a microphone in the front of the room, and I'm
Yeah.
like, people are looking to me for guidance and for like leadership. And it's so different, but it's like that little girl is still in me, And so those are the things that I've worked on over years, and I probably will for my entire life. But it's like
Oh yeah.
it's that expansion feeling. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's like my soul wants to expand in that way. Like it wants to express, it
Mm-hmm.
wants to be seen, it wants to take up space, like it, and it wants to be part of a community of people who are doing that together. And I think that's the power of, a lot of the work that we do in person, where we're coming into these containers as souls who are all here with this like unspoken desire to expand, and you're doing it in this very connected way that's so like intimate and vulnerable and raw, and it's powerful. And that's why like these rooms are powerful, even if it's not in a container of like, a full moon circle or a breathwork ceremony or whatever. Like it can be in a container of a gym dance class, which is like not, it's not on the outside seeming to be that, but it's like it's a spiritual space. And I think you can start to see everything from this lens of like everything is a spiritual space. And really what we were talking about earlier, it's like the soul's expression here through your humanness will show up in all of these different areas. And yeah, I think it's just been mainly like that part of me that's like wanting to express herself without feeling embarrassed or like judged.
Oh yeah. Being seen is, I think, a thing for so
Yeah.
many of us to step into and
Yeah.
to work through. And I think even when you do work on it and you come far with it, it still shows up in so many different ways as you expand yourself into new pockets of being seen in new
Mm-hmm.
areas. I have worked so much through the being seen thing, and it's been a journey for me. And I will say I highly recommend EMDR therapy because that is what I did when I realized I had the block, because I wanted to start getting on social media and putting my face in front of the camera and recording me talking, and that just felt so weird to me that I was like, I'm not an influencer. How could I like go and talk, share my heart to people on like stories or even reels? Like that just feels so who am I to do that? What are people going to think that know me, that don't see me this way, that I'm stepping into this new version of me? It's going to be so awkward. I blocked everybody when I started my new Instagram for my business, so no one could judge me and be like, what is she doing? What is she talking about? Like, it was really, really triggering for me. But I knew that I wanted this so bad because, like I was saying earlier, I was seeing all these videos of other people doing it, and I felt so called to do it myself that I was like, no, I have to figure out how to get over this fear, or I'm never going to be able to step into what I'm feeling intuitively called towards. So again, this was a roadblock, like the analogy that I was using earlier, that I knew I needed to alchemize to get around so I could have what I was trying to manifest. And so I did 4 sessions of EMDR therapy with my therapist. And since then, I don't even care. Like, it has just become, like, it was a little awkward at first, but like it's gotten exponentially easier to where like now I don't even think about it, and it really only took a
Yeah.
couple of sessions of doing that. So highly recommend, whatever anyone is navigating through that you're feeling resistance towards, that is keeping you from what you're dreaming about and feeling intuitively called towards. Yeah, I think EMDR therapy is the fastest way to alchemize what it is you're feeling resistance
Yeah.
towards.
Yeah, it is so true. It's so powerful. And I've had like straight up, I feel like similar experiences to some of the like plant medicine work that I've done in EMDR therapy, which is
Mm,
just crazy to me. And it's, I mean, yeah, it like feels sometimes to me like I'm having like a psychedelic experience where there's like visions and things, and I'm like, what is happening? And then I come back into the room and I'm like, all right, now I have to like go drive my car and like
you get
live
that
my
through
life.
EMDR?
Yeah.
That's
But I
wild.
think I think it's because so my therapist was actually telling me, she's like, if you have certain, and this is like so crazy to me, but like certain neural pathways in your brain have been opened up already because of plant medicine,
Mm,
then like it's almost like that like roadway is open now. So you
interesting.
can like tap into it easier
Huh.
when you're in like different modalities, which is really
Interesting.
cool. And like, I have no idea if that's like backed or what. Like, this is just like what she told me. But I mean, it kind of makes sense to me that like, you know, it's sort of like anything new, like when you're learning a new skill or, you know, a new, like embodying a new energy, right? Like,
Yeah.
the more you do it, the more you start to see yourself that way. And so I kind of think,
Yeah.
you know, like I don't know, and this is like a whole separate tangent, we're going to go down a little rabbit hole here, but I mean, for me, with that type of work, I feel like it's one of those things where it's already accessible to you regardless of whether you do EMDR, plant medicine, whatever, right? It's accessible to all of
Pick your
us. It like
tool.
is
Yeah.
right. It exists here right now. Like, you have everything internally that you would need to like heal and to work through your
Mm-hmm.
blocks. And similarly, you have everything you need right now to like manifest and achieve your wildest dreams, right? But I think my experience has always been like, it's just, and we talked about this before, it's just so easy to forget that. And so you live in this state of like forgetting. I'm so disconnected. I'm so disconnected. And some of these tools are like a really quick way to almost, it's almost like how I felt when I didn't have glasses and I didn't know that I needed glasses. And then I put my mom's glasses on when I was a little kid for the first time, and I saw the tree outside of my backyard, and I was like, oh my God, they
This is
have
what I've
like
been missing.
trees have leaves on them. Like, I was like, what?
The
Like, it's not just a
detail.
blob of green out there. Like, it has leaves. And it was like, oh, now I can see what was there all along. I just couldn't see it before, you know? And it's just this like instant shift. And I feel like that's where our brains are now, where it's like we've just forgotten all of this wisdom and this just way of being in that frequency. And so these tools are all ways to kind of like put glasses on and just see things clearly for what they really are
Yeah.
and help you shift so much faster.
I love that analogy. That's really cool. I believe in it so much because I think
Yeah.
it's like you don't know what you're missing until you get into it. And
Yes.
once you start to see that, which is kind of going back to the trust muscle analogy, and you get a little bit of proof to how this works. Like
Yeah.
for me, when I sent I have if there's shadow or resistance or a trigger that comes up or any kind of fear, anything, I'm like, let's go. let's unpack it. I'm like pumped. I'm like, do I need to book a therapy appointment? Do I need to sit down and journal? Do I need to go to a breathwork class to unlock this? What feels like the tool I want to use right now? Do I need to do plant medicine? Because I know like there's something here there that I need to learn from this. And on the other side of it is going to be something so good. Like I have had enough reps to know that
Yeah.
through any rock bottom, any turbulence in your life, any resistance or roadblocks that come up emotionally, on the other side of it is always a gift. You always get a gift for it. And so now when it pops up, I'm like, let's go, because I can't wait to see what's on the other side. Like, bring it on. And so one of the examples that I love is I used to be terrified of like water because I watched Jaws way too many times as a kid. So I had an irrational fear. I'm from Arizona also. So like pool, shower, whatever it was like a shark is gonna get me. So back in like my early 20s, I went snorkeling and I couldn't. Like I tried and I had the worst anxiety attack. I was just convinced that something was going to eat me and I couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't do it. But now that I was a totally different person then, but now that I am into kind of this way of living to where I'm like, nope, let's conquer any fear that is standing in the way of doing fun things. I went to Egypt last year and went scuba diving. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go because the last time I attempted just snorkeling, I couldn't handle it. But I was like, no, we're a different person now. We do hard things. Like, it is fine. We just have to conquer the mind. So I was able to do snorkeling that day before I went scuba diving, and I did well with it. So I was like, I think I can do scuba diving. We'll see how it goes. But I was terrified. And when you get under there and you're down there, so you don't have to be certified through where we did it. Like, you have a guide that goes with you and they like handle your stuff to make
Yeah.
sure that like you don't die. They give you the guidelines and they're with you the whole way through. So I knew enough, but not totally. So we're down there and I'm like, okay, like I got this, it's fine. But then water started to get into my mask and I like couldn't get it out with the trick that they had showed me. And I was starting to get really bad anxiety because in my mind I'm like irrationally thinking of like my, goggles are going to fill with water and I won't be able to see and it's going
Yeah.
to burn and like what do I do? And so now like my breathing is getting heavier, the bubbles are coming up and like in front of me and I'm motioning to the guide like take me up, take me up. And he literally shakes his finger at me like no. And I'm like, in the matter of like the second after that, my brain is like, well, what do we do? Like, do we swim up to the top? Can you swim up to the top? If you swim up to the top, are you gonna die? Like because of the equilibrium? Like, can you tell this guy to just like go shove it and do what you want because you're terrified, or do you listen to this person that like is a random man you just like met in Egypt? So this all happens in a matter of a second, and I'm like, I mean, I don't want to die today, so I guess I'm gonna stay under here because he's telling me no. So I'm like, I'm at the mercy of this random Egyptian man. And so he starts motioning to me under the water because you basically have to speak in sign language. He's like motioning with his hand, like, breathe in, breathe out. And then like he kind of waved his hand to the side, like, look around, look how beautiful like all the coral is. So I'm like, I'm at this man's mercy. I guess I just have to lean into this. So I breathe in, I breathe out, and I look around, and I maybe did it twice. And all of a sudden, I was perfectly fine. And I was like, holy crap. Like my head basically exploded under the water. I was like, I just calmed myself down. Like I literally thought I was going to die 30 seconds ago and now I'm like, hey, like that's cool fish with some coral over there.
Mm-hmm.
It broke my brain open that like it ended up being one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had, which kind of goes back to what you were saying with the dance class. Who would think that a dance class could be
Right.
spiritual? Who could think that a scuba diving experience could be spiritual? But like it was the most profound spiritual experience I think I've ever had because it just broke my brain open. I didn't even care about the coral and the fish anymore. I couldn't wait to get back up to the top to explain like what I had learned about fear down underneath the water. And I just learned that most of what you think and believe that you need or that your problem is just in your mind. It's what you believe it to be, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. It's just your perception, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
reality. So when for those few moments that I was like, I need to go up, take me up, like I'm gonna die if I don't go up, is like what my brain was thinking. Or if I do go up on my own, I'm gonna die. That like I was in this panic mode. It was just perception. It wasn't necessarily real. and I
Yeah.
was able to calm myself down. So nothing in that moment changed other than my perception. Everything in that moment stayed the same. I was in the same place with
Yeah.
the same circumstances. Literally nothing changed but my perspective. And then everything was fine. And I was like, I don't think I've experienced anxiety the same since. Like I used to have to take anxiety medicine. I haven't for years, but I just feel like that is something I will hopefully never have to deal with again, just because like I've learned what I've learned through that experience, that it's like it's just perception. Like you're fine, you're okay. Like if as long as you can switch your perspective and your perception, like you're gonna be okay. Like
Yeah.
there's really only like a handful of things like where you need to be in that panic situation. Like if the house is on fire and you need to get out, then like that panic makes sense. But
Genuine
like
threat. Yeah.
yeah, but for a lot of these like little things that we navigate in life, it's like that's what that experience taught me, that like your mind is the most powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was the coolest experience. I hope that everyone gets to experience something similar like that, where they realized, oh my gosh, my fears were literally just keeping me stuck. Like I was
Yeah.
perfectly fine. It was just my perception. Like I
Yeah.
I hope it for everybody, because it just breaks you open. So cool.
Well, I think that life like gives you those moments all of the time, right? It's like those moments of discomfort when your mind starts to kick in and is like, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I can't. Get out of this, get
Yep.
out of this, right? Like numb yourself, distract yourself, don't stay here. And it's like you just have to stay
And be
and
with
just
it.
feel it and just feel it, right? And it's like, and I think it's important to acknowledge that like it's okay to be afraid in those moments. Like it's like, yeah, this is scary. Like you're literally under the water and you could die.
Yeah.
Like you could. But
That was
then
a
it's also
borderline one of
like,
those situations where
right.
like it could be life threatening.
It could be. There's plenty of situations where it's not, right? Where you're like, I'm so scared to go on a date with this person, right? And it's like
Yeah.
you're going to be fine. But I do think that it's important to acknowledge like there's a discernment there that becomes easier to understand the more you work with your higher self and your intuition and start to
Yeah.
like, navigate these things we've been talking about, right? Because I do remember, and separately, that is like one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard you tell. And I love that story so much. And I've told other people that story for you because it's like one of my favorites. Because I also love the whole like stop, breathe, look around.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, just that alone could be like a bumper sticker. It could be like, I could like literally maybe potentially tattoo that on myself. Probably not, but like close. It's so good because it's like any time, right? Like you're getting overwhelmed. It's just that like drop in moment of like deep breath. Okay, you're here. Like you're experiencing this. Like you could be in like a terrible situation, but it's like look around, like you're here. You're alive. You chose this. Like you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
And like I just think it's such a powerful reminder. But with where I was kind of taking that, my brain always is like 5 steps ahead of me, was that like discernment piece of, okay, when am I like actually in fear? Is my nervous system considering this fear because in the past I had something traumatic happen, or I had enough like, small t traumas that taught me that this similar circumstance isn't safe for me, which in that situation, it doesn't even matter if it's like a genuine life threatening fear, because to your body, it feels like it is, right? And that's
Yes.
really all that matters. And it's a really slippery slope because it's like depending on the level of trauma that you've had or the level of wounding you've had, and how much healing work you've done around that and how much awareness you have around that, you have to navigate it really carefully. Because if you're not in a place where you're ready to really confront
Yeah.
that in like a direct way like you did, it could be super traumatizing for someone. Like
Oh
I know
yeah.
I've had plenty of experiences where I've tried to push through the fear and just like feel the fear and do it anyway, and it's like it's blown up in my face because maybe like, like an example could have been like if you didn't take that deep breath and you were just like, no, like I have to get out of this, get me up, get me up, get me
Yep.
up, you would have been so triggered for like the rest of your day,
I would have
like
never done
trying to
scuba
calm
diving
yourself down.
again.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you would have had to, and maybe you would have had lessons from it still. Like you may have ended up at the same point, right? Like you don't know, but it could have been a totally different
Totally.
situation. But there was a part of you that knew, whether it was conscious or not, before you said yes to doing this that day, that like you were ready for it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? there was a part of you that knew you could handle it if you like just showed up and took the action and were willing. And I think that's where we're like getting that sweet spot of discernment of being able to know like, yes, today's the day, or like, no, today's not the day, you
Yeah.
know? And it
Yeah.
takes time. And again, it's like what we talked about before, it's that trust muscle, because like there are plenty of moments where, you know, an anxiety is a tricky thing, because in that way also I do firmly believe a lot of times anxiety is like a sign that your soul, your higher self, is leaning towards something and your ego is like not yet
Hang
there.
on. Yeah.
And there's this conflict, right? So you're like, okay, well, like I know that I shouldn't be in this job, but here I am every single day, you know, doing the same old thing. And I know I'm not really supposed to be here, but like, gotta stay, you know? And I feel like a lot of our anxieties come from that, or come from these like deep feelings of not being safe for one reason or another that we just haven't worked through yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tricky to navigate in that way, but I do feel like the more you can understand the feelings in your body and like tuning into those little signs, and also having that like internal parent sense that at any point you can always like change, right? Like you're not stuck in that. Even if you try something and then you're
Yeah.
like, this isn't really working out. Like you can always course correct even in the middle of an experience by like stepping in and kind of be, all right, like I've got you. Let's go, you know, take a breather, go back and like do some calming, you know, somatic practices to like regulate your nervous system again and get grounded again. And then we'll try it again next time, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this way more, but it's just interesting to like think about, you know, specific for me. I get a lot of social anxiety, and like my social battery drains really quickly. So there's been plenty of times where I'm like, you know, there's this event and I signed up for it, but I don't really want to go. And I just feel sort of like overwhelmed just thinking about it. But then I'm like, you know, something wanted me to go to this initially. Like when I signed up for this thing, or I said yes to this thing, there was a part of me that wanted to do that. Will I get the benefit if I just force myself to go? Or do I listen to the part of me that's like, no, you really just need a bubble bath and like to stay home and watch Netflix, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like a work in progress. It's like it's like a case by case. Like you have to be able to figure out like, how does my higher self talk to me? How does my nervous self talk to me? And how do I get to a point where I can like
Mm-hmm.
understand their messages and respond accordingly?
Yeah. Well, again, it's all data. And so, like we were talking
Yeah.
about in one of the earlier episodes, where you are sitting in your seat of self and
Yeah.
you are the observer, you're being the top of the triangle, like we said in the last episode, which, for reference, the top of the triangle is like you being in your seat of self. And then on the two bottom points, you have your intuition on one side and your ego on the other. Which, now as we're talking about this, I almost feel like we need another data point on there for your emotions, because you aren't your emotions. It's just another data point. Your feelings and anxiety, fear, all that. It's, again, just a different sorts of data that comes through. So maybe that's in the middle of the 2 points of the triangle on the bottom. But um, the more practice that you can have feeling into what your different emotions feel like, what your intuition feels like, what your egoic thoughts feel like, which I guess emotions kind of fall under a subcategory of your ego in a way. But it's all just different points of data. So the more that you can sit in your seat of self as the soul in your body and take a step back and go, okay, like, what am I feeling here between all the different kinds of data that's coming in, and like what makes the most sense to embody being my highest self? What is in my highest good right now?
Mm-hmm.
Are these emotions like keeping me safe from something? Are these emotions of me being tired and not wanting me to go to this event going to serve my highest good because I really, maybe I'm getting sick? Maybe I would get sick if I went to this event because I'm not listening to
Right.
how tired I am and my body's trying to tell me that it needs rest. Or is this my ego being like, oh, we don't want to go to this event by ourselves, it's going to be awkward? Or maybe you're going to that dance class and that feels a little stretchy to your nervous system and you're like, oh, I'm going to look like a goof. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you can peel back those layers and see like, what is this trying to tell me? Which part of me is this? And is this serving my highest good? Is this allowing me to be the type of person that I want to be? And then making your decision from there. So it just always comes back to looking at the data.
We're just like little data scientists over here.
The
Just
data scientist of yourself.
all in the data every day, all day. Love data. I don't. I do in this context, not in
Yeah,
other
right?
contexts.
100%.
Well, I can touch on a quick example of a cool manifesting experience I had because when we were prepping for this, we were trying to talk about like, specific times that we've seen, manifesting actually work really well. And, of course you're manifesting all day, every day anyway, but I was thinking back over the years, and one of the coolest experiences I had with the actual like specific intention of manifesting something was I'm a bar 3 instructor now. Back then I was just like obsessed with bar 3. I worked out there all the time. I did the online classes. It was like my favorite thing. And I was on their email list, and I got this email about a very small retreat that bar 3 was running in Maui at this really nice resort. And I read through the email list. I clicked on the landing page. I was like, oh my God, I have to go on this retreat. Like, the most beautiful place. The resort pictures were beautiful. It's like daily classes, sit by the pool, go do like snorkeling, like kayaking in the ocean, all this stuff. And I went and looked at the price, and I was like, holy shit, I cannot afford this at the moment. Like, this is a real big stretch, and there's no way this is going to happen. And at the time, I was like, I need to find a way to make this work. And I'm going to think about like some other options outside of just, putting this on a credit card and then being like paralyzed by debt, to make it happen. So I ended up researching the company that was promoting the event, who had helped to like write the email list. And it was a guy who ran his own coaching business, and he had like a side practice that was all about partnering with brands who run retreats and then helping integrate like different coaching modalities and kind of like handle all of the production of the actual retreat itself. And so I reached out to him and introduced myself. We started talking. I let him know that I was, freelancing, and that I did social media management and brand management and copywriting and all of this stuff. And that I was also in the coaching space. And it turned out he needed help with his social media. So I'm like, hey, I'm happy to partner with you. I already know the bar 3 brand, so I could like help with some blog posts. I could help with some of the email marketing. And, on the side, it would help me build up my resume, build up my portfolio or whatever. So I started working with him. And then a couple weeks before, maybe a week before the retreat, he reached out to me, and he was like, hey, I'm really scrambling. My production manager backed out at the last minute and can't come. Would you be willing to step in and come on the retreat and help manage, all the logistics? And he's like, I wouldn't be able to pay you, but, you can come for free, and you can learn like behind the scenes how to do this. And I was like it, in the moment when it happened, it was the weirdest thing, because my ego had not been like, my mind had not been thinking, I'm going to find a way to go. I'm going to find a way to go. It was like an initial ping when I got the email that was like, I'm going on this retreat. But then after that, it wasn't then like we talked about with the GPS example, controlling every single step. Like, well, if I do this, then this will happen, then this will happen. I was just like following it as it felt natural. And then when he told me like, hey, here's this option, would you want to do it? I had this like gut feeling of like, I knew it was going to end up here, and it was just such a cool little turn of events. And anyways, I went, and it was amazing. I met like the most incredible people. It was a really good experience for me to be able to like see the whole behind the scenes of all of this and everything. And it was just such a good example of like the full cycle there, and it's led to like lifelong connections. Like, some of these people, I'm still in their orbit, and it's really cool. But it's one of those things that I think like those are obviously extreme examples, but they do show like the overall pattern of it, right? It's like the message comes in, deep down that it's for you, and then you start taking action without being concerned about which way it's going to go, kind of letting go of the outcome, and then you see what it
Yeah.
comes to.
I think what's so cool about that story is that you unknowingly were in surrender with it. You weren't attached to the
Yeah,
outcome. You reached out to that guy, and it really wasn't hinging on like, I'm going to get this free thing, or
right.
that like you were, even if you did kind of have that intention, you still were, you could have been at it just from a place of surrender of like, well, if it works out, it works
Yeah.
out, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But we'll see. I'll just throw it out there. But
Yeah.
you unknowingly were in this place of surrender, and I think that's what created that magnetism for that to be able to come to you, because there wasn't that like restriction. Because when you chase something and you get fixated on it, I mean, if something was chasing after you, what are you going to do? You're going to run towards it? No, you're going to run away from it because it would be weird. Like, so it's like the
Yeah.
same thing works with energy, that like
Yeah.
these things that you're calling in, if you're chasing it and like, being really attached to the outcome of it, like it's naturally energetically just going to be like, whoa, stage 5 clinger, get away from me. So it
Genuinely.
was able to come through and manifest for you. And that's really cool
Where does
proof to the
stage 5 clinger come from? Like what?
The Wedding Singer. No,
No, Wedding
Wedding Crashers.
Crashers.
Wedding Crashers,
But like
yeah.
why is stage 5 like an actual category of something?
Probably. Stage 5 meaning a lot. I don't know. We'll have to Google that one.
How many stages are there?
How many? Is there worse than stage 5?
I don't know. We'll look it up. We'll report back. Because I feel like
So
stage 5 has to be the worst type of clinger, like based on that scene in that movie.
I would think so.
And the references since then, like it's stuck around for quite a while. So I don't know. Yeah,
It is now the ceiling.
it is. It is. Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, stage 6 clinger in the manifesting world. You just actively push away things. It reminds me of like dating, that whole sense of just chasing, being chased, wanting to be chosen, wanting to be picked. I feel like there's
It's
a
an
lot of that
energy.
energy.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's an. I mean, we are all energy. Everything breaks down into energy, like literally everything. And so, yeah, your actions and what's going on inside of you is either repelling or attracting what it is that you desire, which again is why the shadow work is so
Yeah.
important, because it's like, how do you really feel about all of this? Because how you feel about it is what's going to allow it to come in or not come in for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've gotten into a lot, and I feel like we have even more that we wanted to cover. But I think it's probably a good stopping point, and we can pick back up on some of these other things in some deeper ways, because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, it with anything, I think what we're realizing the more we get into this is that all of these topics are just so connected, and I love it. I love where this is taking us.
Totally. It's so fun.
It's
I
so
could talk
cool.
about this all the
I
time.
know. I know. I know.
Well, thanks for listening with us. We have got plenty more coming at you, more rabbit holes to take you down on this adventure of navigating your higher self. So, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know your thoughts. Let us know your questions. We've got our free community for you to join us over at dearhigherself.me is where you can join our community. Let us know what you thought of the episode. We'll have some additional resources for some of the episodes, and you can be in community with like-minded women talking about all the things and all the rabbit hole stories that you've heard here today. So join us over there. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our new episodes. We will have plenty more coming at you, and we will see you in the next one.